this is really an interesting event. For me, personally, this panel, I think we don't need to introduce anyone right now. This is like an indicator of quality. I call this panel everything we want to find out about your integration, everything you wanted to find out about your integration, but not always there is a chance to see people responsible for it in one room on the same day due to various reasons. So, Oleksandr KORNIYENKO, please. First Deputy Head of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Maybe one of the most important links, let's say, of the process of the whole chain, adopting so many laws and ensuring that these lobbying clauses, cults, to keep them away from the legislation, something that will make the life of people worse, something that will be an obstacle for business to function, to get rid of that. So it's really an important job. Alexandre KUBRAKOV, I think there's no need to introduce that person. So he's leading one of the most effective bureaucratic teams in the country. Periodically, when we start these talks of if something goes wrong, he's appointed elsewhere, but today we'll talk about infrastructure. And we also have Mr. Matti MAASIKAS with us, representing the EU delegation to Ukraine. So I'd like to stress also that Mr. MAASIKAS, he represents not only European Union, but represents also the country which provided the largest scope of assistance. If we just calculate it per capita, Estonia, an exemplary country when it comes to the support, an exemplary for many reformers and for Ukrainian reformers as well. So I'm so pleased that you're with us. So Tymofiy MYLOVANOV is mentioned in the agenda. Tymofiy, unfortunately, is not feeling well. Macroeconomic aspect of integration is really important. So Tymofiy, we remember about it. We will definitely ask you a question. With we'll ask Vice Prime Minister as well. So the leader of the Euro integration process, Ms. STEFANISHYNA, is one of the key subjects in the process. I'd like you to step to the stage. So I want to build our conversation in such a way. One by one, we'll ask questions. Each of the panelists will get a question. Olga's role today, if there is a chance, if there's such opportunity, if there's a need to comment, some short reflections, please. When one of two cycles is over, we'll have 2 cycles of questions, 2 rounds of questions with our speakers. And please prepare your questions. Just make notes. We'll have 10 minutes for it. I promise you that we will. So I really encourage our speakers, please be concise. Just give us the very essence. And we'll also have another panelist online, the ex-advisor, very close advisor, but ex-advisor of President Emmanuel Macron. So this is Alexandre. He is with us online. He is the member of the State Council of France. Many questions to him as well, because he has a lot of experience in France, and as we know, France is one of the leaders of the EU, so this experience is really valuable.
So the work of the government and all has work, it's all about the work with expectations. So let us measure the expectations. Ukraine is a member nation to the EU in 2027. Who believes in that? Could you raise your hands? Okay. Alexandre, I will have a separate question for you. So, something like 25% believes that that would be a super fast process of accession of Ukraine to EU, and that process would be possible. Okay, I have a very short question to every one of you. Olha, we know your major motto, Ukraine Today. Mr. Ambassador, the year when Ukraine will become a member nation to the EU. What?
Дуже коротко.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Nobody can give any firm date at this stage. What I can say is very much of the pace of EU integration will depend on the candidate country or the negotiating country. When the negotiations will start, the roadmap will be very clear. It's the EU legislation, the EU norms that need to be adopted, and then you're ready. Ukraine has already beaten many European records when it comes to the pace of EU integration, and I'm sure that you will be able to beat some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexandre.
Alexander, but be concise, your prediction. I believe in this prediction because I have to agree that we've set many records with the EU. So when the accession negotiation will start, a lot will depend on Ukraine, and we have an approximate understanding on how it informs us which directions do we need to amend, what do we need to do. So I think 2027 seems realistic to me, but a lot will depend on how the state would work. You're responsible for Ministry of Infrastructure. Look, I'm responsible for the infrastructure and for what I feel, for what I see, not only in the infrastructure, because we're in the kind of an intergovernmental team. We talk to one another. Okay, what's for the legislation? Well, I think that Ukrainians will have to select MPs from Ukraine in the next elections of 2029 for the EU. Before coming to the questions, I would like us to watch a small video prepared by the team of organizers. So please. The support for our country. I want Ukraine to be part of this large mechanism which is developing, well, new possibilities for making our lives better. I would like the economy and culture to grow. People will have more rights and freedoms. They will feel good, as well as the minorities. They will also feel good. People will have more tolerance, integration to the economy, integration to the energy infrastructure, and different improvements in the technology and socio-economic. We can already feel some positive trends. I think it will adopt the rules and the system and the standards, then will be obligated to follow the format defined by the EU rules. That's going to be a big plus. That will have an impact on people's mentality. Well, to have less corruption, and we will have not only prices like in Europe, but also sellers like in Europe. So we hope for it, and we believe in it. I hope that the educational sector will be kind of transparent, will be reformed, because we need to change a lot. We would need to deal with that. From what I see in European countries and what my friends share, that these European practices are worth implementing for Ukraine. Well, Ukraine would be in Europe, and so that the war would end, and for the bombs not to fly around, and for the bomb not to hit here, so that we could eat pizza and ride the bike. What everybody wants. I want the war to end. First, to improve people's lives. It's necessary that people themselves understood that they need to change something for the better, and you need to be kinder. Yes, you need to be kinder. I would like to say that it's important to teach Ukrainians to think and to speak of Ukraine as a member of EU community, so that everyone would understand what we are offering to Europe and what Europe offers to Ukraine. And over the past year and a half, 2 years, this kind of understanding has become very vivid, and it spreads all around Ukraine. And I think this is the result of the work by our government. Now, legislation. We heard that a lot of laws needs to be changed and amended, but a question whether it's going to be all done in a quality manner. And how the team in the parliament will implement the EU directives, how you're going to cancel all the attempts to do something wrong. And there were a lot of attempts when, under the pretext of European norms, there was attempts to pass some corruption norms. So, Oleksandr Korniyenko, how do we get rid of this temptation to take Euro integration norms for some people to get benefit out of it? Well, we have to rephrase this question. Let me paraphrase that. How do we do that? How do we set the work of a single legislative body, which is the parliament, in a way that we would be implementing the EU norms in as much aligned way as possible to the original? Because it is clear that from the standpoint of legal aspects, we are approaching a certain legal environment, and we cannot become members of the environment with our own versions of that environment. It's not the right approach for doing that. It's not good. That is why we have to be clear and transparent. We have to be clear in terms of the end product, which is developed by the legislative branch of power, which is produced by different organizations at different levels. For example, central executive authorities, local self-government. By the way, they will have to operate within this legal frameworks as well. So the matter of quality is very important. We've analyzed the experience of our counterparts that have most recently became member nations. Well, it happened like 10 years ago or so. A lot has changed, but still, we've learned the experience of Croatia, Baltic countries, the experience of Poland. Now, all of that experience says that the role of the parliament is one of the largest. And the role of expertise in the parliament also is very crucial. Therefore, this activities that we've started by reinforcing the parliament with a special office on Euro integration with experts, running the expertise, assisting to different committees. We have a governmental office which provides the fundamental expertise, and surely all of that allows to make our legislations and regulations better. At the same time, it shouldn't be only the process itself, which is strictly formalized, because it was rightly mentioned in the beginning of this discussion that not all the norms that will be suggested by the EU directives will make our citizens happy. Well, in certain cases, our citizens would not absolutely be happy with the norm, so we'll have to search for a compromise. And here's the other side of the parliament, the other side of MPs as representatives of the people, and they will be helping, because it doesn't matter how you work with the parliament, it will not vote that 100% of the people against it. I'm not saying that there would be norms or directives like that, but some of the things might have a controversial approach within the government and the people. Currently, we have a significant discussion on one of the commitments. We all understand what commitment are we talking about. So, how to differ the right from wrong, the lobbyism from the favorable norms, a certain alignment of directives locally in the Ukrainian context, how to split that from the attempts to manipulate. That would be a very significant challenges, and we would need to solve them politically through negotiations with the partners from the European Commission, and those negotiations at several levels. I would like to say that the Parliament has its own important negotiation work. We are doing some regular political consultations with the MPs of the European Parliament, and over the last half a year we are doing some regular monthly seminars for the MPs, for their assistance in terms of sharing the experience of the Euro integration process. We had joint session of the committees and many other things. So the Parliament has a multi-dimensional approach to that, and I believe that in some time our capacity in Euro integration matters will only increase, and I believe in the next convocations we might be talking about certain formalization of the integration processes, and some of the presidia will take personal responsibility for that, because now it's not part of the job description. Surely it's as the authorities and responsibility of all the government. But for example, if Lithuania, there's a separate official responsible in the legislative body for the integration process. And you've talked about the institutional capacity that the Verkhovna Rada is currently building, and I said that the norms could be interpreted differently, and Acquis Communique, they allow for a wide range of regulation. I mean, we can look at Estonia. This is one of the freest, so to say, economic countries, but there's countries that are kind of in the end of top 100. So do you have an understanding in the parliament that we would need more economic liberty or freedom than the frames offered by the EU regulation? I think that's a discussion from a different panel, different forums. It's the approach to economy. This is something we can see in Facebook a lot, and it's great that we are discussing this issue on such a big platform. I think when the president has presented the economic doctrine, he said that when we will have respective security conditions, then we can deal with the economic reforms. But the fact that Ukraine has a potential in building a free, modern economy which is open, it's absolutely correct. It's absolutely true. We shouldn't be afraid of saying that. Of course, during the war, we need the stability of our taxation system, and this is something that is mentioned in our commitments with the partners and in the memorandums with the IMF. But this discussion, the post-war discussion on the economy, it will be very turbulent, it will be very effective, and we'll surely have some better results. As for the negotiation process, I would like to complement with one thing. The very name of this procedure tells all about this. It's a negotiation procedure. When the negotiations are taking place, then both parties can offer something, can ask or to suggest their own position, and you're absolutely correct that the frames of the directive are fairly wide, and the frames of the negotiation procedure are even wider, because many chapters, many titles, then each of them has certain regulations, procedures, etc. So I think that in certain directions we would need to suggest some models that would be opening our economy even more significant. But in certain directions, we all remember this discussion about wood processing market, and this discussion still continues. We had a discussion with our partners, and I'd say it's a very complicated discussion, we have to say. So at certain aspects would be more open. At certain aspects we would need to protect our economy, and we're working on that as well. Because without the domestic production, processing, and many layers of processing, we won't be able to build a strong economy, and we'll have to take that into consideration in a post-war Ukraine. Thank you. We have Oleksandr Adam with us.
Hi, Alexandre. Can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you.
Great.
Oh, great. First of all, I want to say thank you for the staunch support Ukraine got from France in Vilnius. I hope it's a part of your former efforts. And my question is, if we are serious about Ukraine joining the European Union, we should understand how the European Union will change itself. Because there are two very big issues: power and money. Power, how decisions are made; money, how the European budget is redistributed among members. So what are your expectations concerning this process of self-reforming of the European Union, its budget rules, its rules about decision-making?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. If I may first, I really would like to congratulate the organizers of this event, because joining the EU is really a national endeavor which involves not only the government but also civil society and the country as a whole. So this kind of debate that you're having today, I think that it would be wise to have it all along the process. Second, yes, we are serious. The EU is serious about having Ukraine in, and I am convinced that Ukraine can and will succeed. I'm not underestimating the challenge that this represents both for Ukraine and the EU, but I want to say that you have three big assets. The first one is a committed government and parliament. Second, a skilled civil society and public administration. And third, the support of the public opinion, which is absolutely essential. And I want to add that you are not alone in this. You are not alone in this process. And so, yes, there will be a negotiation, but a negotiation on accession, it is not a zero-sum negotiation. It's not about sacrificing interest. It will be about finding compromises, balance in the overall framework that will be set for your accession. Now, to answer your question, I want to briefly recall what President Macron said in Bratislava last May. That now the question is not whether we should enlarge the EU. We answered that question a year ago by giving candidate status. It's not when we should enlarge. It's as swiftly as possible, but the question is rather how we should do it. And about this, reflection has already begun. Already during the last European Council, late June. It will continue in Grenade in Spain early October. But what is clear, and I think that is really important because this is, I think, a change in the EU's approach to the enlargement, is that the reflection and the preparation on the EU reform must go in parallel, hand in hand, with accession negotiation. And I mean, my opinion is that really this enlargement is an opportunity. It's of course a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for the Union to ask its a number of questions about its security, of course, demographics, our rule of law and values, and the reform of some of the major EU policies like the CAP and cohesion policy. And so today, but I will briefly focus on three. You mentioned two, but I will add a third one. Three topics that are currently discussed in Brussels and in capitals. You mentioned the power issue, let's say the governance issue. The question is whether today's union will remain governable with up to 35 members, and what reform be envisaged. Accession will impact the relations between at the core of the EU decision making, between the Union and its member states, between bigger and smaller countries, or between EU institutions. And so there's a debate today about the need to move to qualified majority voting in more area. That's an ongoing debate. What will be the end result? But what I know is that if this debate is not confident that we will find answer, and most of all, but this is my personal opinion, that quantum leap in terms of governance came with the 2004 enlargement. And the conclusion that I draw from this almost years since the last enlargement is that the decision-making process has not really been affected. I am quite sure that Matti MAASIKAS would agree on this. I think that a bigger challenge, of course, will be the impact on the budget. Because presumably Ukraine will become the main net beneficiary of European funding. Today, as far as I know, we don't have the estimate of the financial impact of an enlargement to 35, but I know that the Commission is working on this. But in a way, the answer is either the cake gets bigger or everyone gets a smaller slice. And so this will be, of course, and especially in the case of the common agricultural policy, because Ukraine is an agricultural superpower, this will be one of the key aspects of the negotiation, and there will be for the EU some hard budgetary choices. And finally, because this is also something that is discussed right now, there's the question of the accession process itself. Experience shows that enlargement can be, that's not what I'm wishing for Ukraine, but can be a lengthy process. And so the challenge is to maintain the incentives to reforms all along the process. And so, and President von der Leyen mentioned it as well in Bratislava last May, there are thinking of a sectoral integration or step-by-step integration where candidate countries would join parts of the internal market before full accession, with one benefit being, of course, a smoother, I think, adaptation and more incentives in terms of integration and EU funding to candidate countries before full accession.
Thank you very much. And my second question is country-specific one. We all have seen what can do allowed minority, I mean Polish farmers, who were drivers of blocking Ukrainian agrarian export. We all know very well that the French farmers are maybe much more louder minority. So the question is how will the French government deal with their own agricultural interests, farmers, in accommodating Ukrainian interests in the process of accession?
tricky issue, and that's kind of the follow-up of I was mentioning about the hard budgetary choices. I will be frank. I mean, if the result of a negotiation for French farmers is that there is more subsidizing Ukraine farming to Ukraine accession will diminish. And today it is still high, and I want it to maintain it at a high level. So this, it was also what I was mentioning about the different solutions, either the bigger cake or smaller slices, but also the question of the instruments that we could use to accompany this process of accession. We have used during the past years extra budgetary tools like Next Gen EU. I think this has to be part of this budgetary negotiation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And наступний Олександр.
Next one is Alexandre. So this is the Alexandre's panel, I can say. Recovery during the war, recovery as a part of the process of your integration. Alexandre, your team right now, you're trying to recover something we can recover. So what is the role of European Union in this process? I would split this question into two directions. So first of all, let's start with the funding. 80%, almost 85% of projects, recovery projects that are implemented in Ukraine today, these are implemented by the mechanisms of international organizations, IFIs. European Investment Bank goes for half of it in different sectors. It's present directly with regions. They work via the government, with regional state administrations, with the local authorities. And the majority of projects use this mechanism. In order to provide those loans, European Commission, like last year and this year, give certain guarantees. So basically, we can say that EU is already involved seriously in the process, European Commission in the recovery process, within the scope that we have today. So if we talk in general about our cooperation, what is happening during the war, the full-scale war, so we have difficulties with logistics. This is the obstruction number one for full recovery of the economy. For some sectors, this is super critical. For some, less critical. And in this area, first of all, it's the second year when we have the free movement agreement for our trucks to freely move around the EU. We fully liberalized that. The cargo delivery is liberalized. Imagining this before, it would be hard, because we remember these quotas annually. We were fighting for the quotas with neighboring countries, and this is a shoulder of support. I can just tell you that I can't even imagine if the situation changes, the war is over. I don't want these quotas to go back. I can't even imagine this. I think we can rely on our European partners that this is, I do hope this is irreversible. Yeah, we have requirements, of course. Second thing, solidarity paths, the project, where we have the financial support from European Commission and with organizational processes. Tens of millions of agricultural products exported within these solidarity paths. So at the bilateral moments, we just have some tension with the neighboring countries. I don't think this adds something positive, of course. It doesn't. Some blockages or bilateral tension. So it looks like a minor thing for those countries. For us, this is not a minor thing, because we have a very serious context and we were struggling in the war context. So we have a bunch of projects. Last year, we opened 2 border crossing points in Romania. With Romania, these were prepared these were prepared for Euro 2012, but I don't know why these were not open before, but we opened these. We want to improve it. Also, 2 additional ones are planned for Romania, also for Poland. So we added some lines in Krakovec. Everything we can do, we're doing. We have the cooperation. So the funds, European funds, are there. And via these funds, the projects are funded. And in 2023, we already have it. So trans-border cooperation, I think, of course, there's always space for improvement. But I do think that in this case, we're doing everything we can. We feel that we're supported by our partners and colleagues, the Danube and the Danube ports. Again, I just want to say that with the proper support of the European Commission, Romania, it was fully understanding, because this was a super political issue for 20 years. It has been a super political issue for 20 years. We couldn't do anything. When Kuchma was president, when Kirpa was there, we always came back to that issue. And now the war context in Romania helped us with that, so we have a clear coordination. Again, TNT quarters, we already have a survey of EIB, requested by EIB. We already start preparing the feasibility study, the quarters that are in the territory of Ukraine. We understand fully that logistics will be definitely different. Ukraine will not be a zone for Russian goods transit, just like Belarusian goods. This is clear. So the whole model will be different. It will be transformed completely, and this is happening in tight cooperation with the Commission. So I would stop here. So the question of the issue of recovery, yeah? That was my question. So supporting the status quo, basically. The colossal recovery, that will take place in Ukraine. Billions of dollars of funding. Very interesting topic. Institutionally, are we ready for it? I mean, my colleagues, journalists, who tell about very strange companies and schemes that they use, something doubtful in the current recovery process. How can we handle this? One answer, just a comprehensive answer. So first, of course, transparency must be ensured, and we work with the DREAM system. There is a lot already in the system. In September, we will update it, but the thing is simple. Everyone has to see everything. All the budget plans, all tenders, all funding sources, all the subcontractors, everything. We do it. I do hope that legislators will help us. It's happening at the level of bylaws. We use this framework right now. I do hope that definitely this will be an obligatory thing, to use this system, reporting. Also, when you use all the budgets, local authorities' budgets and the budgets of the state agencies and partners' money. This is the issue number 1. I'm pretty sure that in 2023 we will introduce it. In September, again, we will have a huge update of the system functions. Thousands of projects you'll be able to get in that format with the reports. Secondly, this is anti-corruption infrastructure. I do think that no matter what people talk about, it's working. So we can see the cases in the system, in our system, even in our ministry. And it's absolutely adequate thing. It depends on the personal attitude. It is the period right now, maybe the routine that shall take place. Yes, there may be some scandals with specific cases, yes. I can tell you that definitely the anti-corruption infrastructure is functioning. Nobody can say that these agencies are fully dysfunctional. We have results. Secondly, when it comes to big budgets, as you say, the big recovery or colossal recovery concept, I think that now we don't have these big budgets. I'm stressing on the 85% of projects funded at the expense of IFIs. And I just want to tell you that the vast majority of the projects, these are the loans which are restructured last year, this year, those were even launched before the war. So the EBRD project that was aimed at the northern detour for Lviv, right now we use the money for the bridge repair. So we talk about this. If we speak of what you mentioned, this is a comprehensive issue. Just if we want big investors to come to Ukraine with big money, of course we have to finish the anti-corruption reform. We have to complete it, and the rule of law to actually become a practice, not just a word on paper. So we do observe that there is a movement towards that goal. We can see the results. It will take place. The security risks is important right now. Even these small investment projects we have in Ukraine, these are super complicated. Like IFC right now is entering the Ukrainian Danube company, our state enterprise. We can see the whole process. It's really, it's super hard. We still are amidst the war. In Izmailport, they have missiles, and their central office is there, the IFC office. So there's some physical threat. We know the German, the American project, European Commission is doing some small stuff is happening. And why is it important? It's happening. It's taking place. It's not important at all. What is the scope of investment? The scope of the project. Knauf, instead of the they have a destroyed plant and they want to build another one in Solidar. It's already destroyed, so they want to build a new one elsewhere. The state will help and support them at any way. More serious stuff. I do hope that our way to European Union itself is, when Ukraine is becomes the member of the EU, all those things that intimidate investors will vanish, at least half of them, because EU is EU. What else can I say? Thank you. I do want to remind you that you will have an opportunity to ask at least 3 questions. Our speakers will get at least 3 questions from you when we have the full round complete. This is a unique opportunity to ask people. It's really hard to reach out and to gather them in one place usually, so get ready. Dear Mr. MAASIKAS, so please, I'd like to get it from you right now. So we as Ukrainian society, as Ukrainian business, what expectations should we have for October, when the decision shall be made if Ukraine is moving forward or this process is obstructed or slowing down?
Thanks a lot. First of all, in Central and Eastern European region, all successful EU integration processes have been supported, have been possible due to the strong domestic political consensus and high public support. So this is why one needs to, that's where my real answer starts, one needs to be very optimistic about October, about the European Commission's report, and that's why one, from the side of society and business and civil society and media, should also put pressure on the political class so that the last remaining things of the EU7 recommendations, like the restoration of the asset declarations or the redefining the politically exposed persons, that these last things would be done as well. Then I think we all can look with great optimism and confidence towards October.
Unfortunately, you are leaving Kyiv this year. I think that everybody who dealt with European Union representation knows very well that you made a lot. So what is your legacy as European ambassador in Ukraine? Your personal outcome of these 3 years here as a European ambassador, European Union ambassador?
Anything that has been achieved on Ukraine's path, or on Ukraine's EU path, has been achieved and is being achieved by the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian administration, and the Ukrainian people. I don't claim any legacy here. Diplomats' role is to explain the country or the organization that has sent you in your host country and vice versa, to explain the host country and its particularities back in your capital. And here, maybe if one compares with the quote-unquote normal diplomatic posting, I have had to, or before the full-scale invasion started, I had to do much more this explaining Ukraine to Brussels than normally would be. I mean, normally you would more explain Brussels or the EU to Ukraine. Now that all these processes have accelerated so tremendously, of course, this work has gotten easier as well. I think we understand each other better and better. Thanks.
Thank you. Olga,
Olga, you have a chance to draw some conclusions and to make a certain summary on what we've heard today. What's the key principles that we have to use as takeaways? I would point two things based on this discussion. First, about principles. Second, about money. Now, as for the principles, Ukraine is the source of the best practices today. And today we know very well how to implement the European rules, standards, and this is evidenced by the fact that both Parliament and the government, over the period of our tenure, have adopted all the acts and regulations that were made priority on the agenda. Surely we have a list of 37. That's the legislative acts that has to be adopted. There's over 50 that has to be adopted by the government, but that's a matter of time only. And should we compare this with the previous 10 years and the previous governments, presidents or parliaments, that is the reality that was not made possible. We've adopted laws, some regulations, budgets, and today they are recognized by the world. So today, whenever we're talking about consensus or the corrupt risks or certain ill-behaved lobbyism in the parliament, currently the motion in the government and in the parliament is the following: that everything that we are doing, everything that we are achieving is achieved due to a high price. I'm talking about the front line. I'm talking about the difficulties and the challenges faced by our families. That is why all those unwilling to transform and to change, they're becoming less and less popular. There's less and less people like that. And I can see this process, the beginning of the process, that started on the first day after my appointment as the Vice Prime Minister. I met the President, and we had 2 blank pages, although the size of A3. Here I want to see a roadmap for EU membership. That's one piece of paper, and here, the other piece of paper, I would like to see a roadmap for membership to NATO. So, this is something that we are working every day for ourselves, and the same is for the Parliament. This is a very difficult process. Not a single draft law registered in the Parliament wasn't approved by the Parliament in the wording that we've submitted, despite all of these says that approved by the EU or approved by me personally. So that means the development of us as the political nations. This is a great platform for the next Parliament, for the next political cycles, because everything that we could possibly do over those 4 years, we've done that. There were no obstacles, there were no limitations, there was no political misunderstandings. We had a complete green light. That's why we've managed to submit application for membership and receive the confirmation that we shall become a member nation of the EU. We got a candidate status. So today we have a significant liberalization of the market with the European Union. That's what Alexandre has mentioned, and many other things. That's when we have no doubts in ourselves, and thanks to our experience, thanks to the path that we've already had. Now, second is about money. That's a difficult story. Well, since we have a hard talk, we talked about the financial support to Ukraine, a large, ambitious project of 50 billion euro for 4 years for Ukraine. Over 50 billion in USD from United States, and the program of IMF. That's a significant money, but this is not the money for the rebuilding. That's the money to have our economy survive. So, talking about the large post-war recovery and hundreds of billions of euro that will come to Ukraine, today we are laying the foundation for that. It's all about the Ukraine facility plan that provides for the structural reforms and transformation within the country. When this will happen, we'll be ready for that, and that money will come. But nobody knows when this will take place, when the war will be over, and when this massive process will start. And the only source for the funding of the development of the country is not the survival of the EU integration. This is the process of preparing ourselves to the membership and the reforms related to the EU accession. We have to realize this, and it is why we're doing the self-screening. This is why we're setting priorities on reforms. This is why we're setting priorities for legislation. And this is going to be the only tool that will allow us to set the budget and the developmental program for the state under conditions of the war, not waiting for the possibility for a large revival. It's important to realize that this is reality we live in, and this is a significant positive impact of the political decision made on the 23rd of June 2022, when Ukraine got a candidate status. Well, unfortunately, we haven't heard that decision in Vilnius, because today we understand that one political decision has changed the whole Europe. The reforms in the EU started, and now the Euro integration is becoming the only driver for the development of the country and for the financial support of development. Now, it's great that our major partner is USAID, and that says that there's no gap in between of our transformation and the vision of our country. I think that these are the two important outcomes, and they point to the fact that we've already laid the foundation for the most important decisions for our country, for those transformations to take place. And secondly, we've taught the whole world how to survive, how to fight. Now we have to show the whole world how to develop in a fast manner because of integration. Thank you. As an editor, I know that you remember the beginning and the end of all the articles. So now the audience will have a chance to make a solid full stop in this discussion. So anyone wishing to ask the question, please, could you pass the microphone? Please introduce yourself, and please name the person you are addressing the question to. Pashkov, Mikhail Razumkov Center. I don't have a question, but a small comment on, you were asking in the beginning when Ukraine will join the EU. In July, we've made an all-national survey in Ukraine, and most of the Ukrainians believe that the accession will take place within 1 to 5 years. Secondly, if a referenda would take place this year on the accession to EU, then 87% of the people of Ukraine would come, and out of them, 93% would vote in favor to the EU. So the level of support is unique. The level of support of the EU integration. And the last compliment, that's personally to the Vice Prime Minister. 71% of the citizens of Ukraine believe that EU integration of Ukraine to be effective and successful. So this high level of social expectations of the EU integrations and hopes, that is why I believe that we have to match this level of expectations of our citizens. Thank you. Now, anyone willing to comment on this, or shall we make a full stop? Thank you for the comment, but I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that my work is to coordinate, is to direct, is to set the priorities and make sure that the goals set in Brussels would be achieved. But this is a teamwork. So we have to point that the successes we're talking about today would not be possible without 100% political mobilization. Alexandre? Yes, the survey shows that majority of people believe in the EU. In fact, it's even more people that believe in the EU than in the other EU member countries. And that says that Ukraine may not only be the hosting party in this process, but the giving party, the party that will offer something when it will join the EU. I mean, currently, the Ukrainian society, they believe in these ideas. And speaking on our joint efforts, today I will always cite the words of the ambassador on the domestic consensus. So when I will have discussions in the parliament on the integrational draft laws, with all the flags addressed to, but the opposition says that they're not in due time, that some other things have to be considered, we will always remind them of the domestic consensus, that nothing would be possible without the domestic consensus. So thank you for everyone supporting that, and thank you to the counterparts in the parliament. Okay, so I guess we haven't gathered in vain. Alexandre, be brief. I'd like to remind that this path is something that the Ukrainians are doing not for the first year. Already Ukrainians have paid a significant price starting from 2014 for being where we are now, and we are almost in the final stage. And a lot will depend on what member will Ukraine be in the European Union, whether it's going to be a powerful country with powerful economy, or it would be an agrarian, agricultural country with an ordinary economy. A lot will depend on us and on the Ukrainians and on the Verkhovna Rada and the government and the next governments, next members of the Verkhovna Rada. So this is not a process for 1 year, and we can take a look at the path of Poland, which results. Do they achieve it? It's hard for them, but if you compare the present Poland and the Poland of 1990s, that's a different country. So we were willing to have our own path. We're willing to become a powerful country that would reinforce economically and in terms of security the EU. Thank you.
I'm very happy on one hand, but also hugely humbled by the figures of public support that were laid out. More than 90% of Ukrainians want a clear, I presume, as quick as possible EU integration. And that puts, why I'm humbled, that puts awful lot of expectations and responsibility on both the Ukrainian political class and also the European Union. And I will do my utmost, and I know that all my colleagues are doing their utmost so to not to betray these expectations. That's something we need to do for all of us. Thanks.
Дякую. Дякую.
I thank to all the participants of the panel.